Live in the studio, Conservative peer and the author of Return to Growth, Lord John Moynihan. John, welcome to talk.
Thank you, Mark.
First of all, your reaction to this developing story that Peter Mandelson failed security vetting but became the country's leading diplomat anyway.
With probably a strap 3 security clearance, the highest possible level of knowledge about our secrets. Yes. I'm sure that, throughout the day, your other contributors have said a lot about this, but I've been watching, and there are a couple of things that I haven't really seen too much. First is that all this came out 7 months ago. The Independent published this.
Correct.
And said all of this and said...
Front page splash. I've got the headline right here, John, which is as follows. Concerns Mandelson did not pass MI6 vetting for US ambassador role, but Starmer appointed him anyway. The date of that article, Friday the 12th of September 2025.
I know, extraordinary, but it was in the Independent. Now this week, The Guardian published it. Of course, the BBC all read The Guardian, so it's immediate, and everybody, on the Labour side, they say, oh, look at this news. Well, it's seven months old. So that's one of the weird things. Now, if you follow that line of thought, okay, 7 months ago, somebody says it. Now, somebody inside Labour goes, what, really? If indeed they didn't know, if indeed at Downing Street
which is a big if.
What, really? Let's ask Ollie Robbins if that is true. Well, if they didn't do that, if the chap who just resigned, Morgan McSweeney didn't do that, he's a considerably less brilliant operator than people make him out to be. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing that it doesn't add up. And I think some forensic questioning by Kemi or whoever is going to pull out that Starmer's story just doesn't stand up.
No, because it seems those around him in his number 10 operation have sought to protect him because he didn't have a face-to-face conversation with Mandelson prior to the appointment or after his resignation. So that's curious, isn't it?
Yeah,
even though the Prime Minister gave the impression he had spoken to Mandelson because he said, I regret believing Peter Mandelson's lies. And the implication there is that they spoke. They did not speak. He also attended PMQs on Wednesday in full knowledge of this story.
Yeah.
Do you not think it's surprising that when the news broke, if it was the first time he heard it, which would have been Tuesday evening, he might have made a statement then?
Yeah, I mean, I none of it stacks up, and I think it will fall apart over time. And for Labour, this is very inconvenient because they wanted to get rid of Starmer after May so that he could shoulder the blame. And now, they're going to actually lose him before May.
Do you think it's conceivable that he doesn't make it to the May local elections?
Well, there's another month to go, and if a few more shoes drop, then his position it's already untenable, but it becomes ludicrous. Now, there's another point I'd like to pull out about this, which is why did Mandelson fail his security vetting? What was it? Very few people are asking that. Now, the Independent story said it was China, and that's incredibly serious. The implication would be possibly, I've got to be careful of libel, but possibly something like being very good at introducing people into China and helping facilitate trade. And
too close to Beijing, too close to the regime, potentially, allegedly, possibly.
But what
national security, the economy.
What has been exposed about our national security by this person who had so much knowledge of the nation's innermost secrets? Point one. I mean, on the wilder shores of conspiracy theory, there was chatter about Lord Mandelson and Russia for the last 15 years. It would come across. And I hate conspiracy theories, so I thought all this Epstein thing was nonsense, all of this, there's corruption going on was nonsense. And then suddenly you see a picture of Peter Mandelson in his underpants in Epstein's
Paris
house.
Apartment, Paris house.
And you suddenly think, is this a whole world I never knew anything about? Is this a whole world where people behave this way and do these things and it's pervasive? You just don't know. So, I hate conspiracy theories, and yet some of the wildest conspiracy theories seem to be sort of coming true in this particular case. But what was it, and why aren't people following up on what he knew and what he might have revealed to who he was failed on his test his vetting test for.
And I'm trying to be as fair, even-minded and charitable as I can towards the Prime Minister, but there can be only two conclusions as a result of this latest Mandelson scandal. Either the Prime Minister is incompetent and asleep at the wheel, or he's lying, neither of which is a great outcome.
And the former, that he's incompetent and asleep at the wheel. They're not mutually exclusive, by the way. They can be both. But the former, that he was just asleep at the wheel, is becoming more and more untenable as these new facts come in. Particularly
given his CV as a former director of public prosecutions. This is a guy whose job it was to interrogate evidence on a daily basis. And then suddenly he becomes PM and he's Mr. Hands-off.
I know.
Mr. Laissez-faire.
Which opens
again, it doesn't add up.
Which opens up again a third line, which is all these things that he approved to be prosecuted, and all these various things that are hanging over us from that time. If he is so incompetent, as he seems to be claiming he is, because he's not saying I'm a liar, he's saying I'm sorry, I'm incredibly incompetent. If
that's true. That is the main defence at the moment.
If that's the main defence,
I'm sorry, I didn't know what was happening on my watch.
So if that's the case, what about when you were DPP?
Now, we've got further developments to this, Lord John Moynihan. Bloomberg sources are saying that Peter Mandelson did not simply fail his vetting. Issues were raised and the Foreign Office security team and Robbins had to make a decision on whether to grant his clearance. Ollie Robbins apparently felt bound by the rules of the security vetting process not to tell the PM, number 10, or the Foreign Secretary about Mandelson's concerns, and therefore it appears that the PM and number 10 were unaware of this until Tuesday. So is that the get-out-of-jail-free card for the Prime Minister, John?
That appears to be the story, but there's another story that I'm pretty confident I remember correctly, which is that back in the autumn last year, Civil Service said that they had forwarded, I think it may have said it to the European, not the European, the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, that they had forwarded information to...
Well, I'm glad you said that because, in fact, Finlay, have you got the clip of a Conservative Member of Parliament who actually he's just been tweeting this with some considerable, I would say, consternation and a big response to this. Take a listen to this Afra Brandreth, Conservative MP, who spoke to Robbins at this Parliamentary Select Committee some months ago, and it was clear from Robbins that the government, the Prime Minister, number 10, wanted this appointment. Take a listen.
Did the FCDO have a different view about who should be recommended for the posting?
I think by the time we're describing, it was clear that the Prime Minister wanted to make this appointment himself and had, therefore, I understand that the FCDO was informed of his decision and acted upon it, and via the Foreign Secretary sought and obtained the King's approval for the appointment. But we were, in this particular case, as Chris has explained, the Prime Minister took advice and then formed a view himself, and we then acted on that view.
I mean, there we have a smoking gun. The Prime Minister formed a view himself.
Exactly. And now he's saying the opposite. Maybe he's been, I should never imply that, but who knows, in an alternative reality, maybe he was offered a peerage or some such that led to the most recent statement. But see, that's the other thing. There's this chumocracy, and it's mostly among the civil servants. Now, you're in this whole intelligence, foreign affairs area. You've got that very senior individual who left a bunch of papers behind a bus station in Canterbury. Do you remember that one?
I do.
What happened to him? Nothing. He's been promoted to a very big firm. There was all sorts of scurrilous talk about a former ambassador to America. What happened there? Was that investigated? Did that ever come out? No, it didn't. Now, the interesting thing is that Peter Mandelson appears to be have been given honorary membership in that more civil service chumocracy, and they are capable of running rings around most of us in terms of our ability to pursue something, be forensic in our questions, really break open the story. I don't think they're going to succeed on this one. I think it will be broken open. But why? The more ethereal question is, okay, what about this chumocracy all helping each other out? And why are they prepared to go to these lengths for Peter Mandelson, of all people?
Now, John, we're going to get to defence, which is a critically important issue facing the country at the moment. Briefly, though, with your political head on, how do you see this scandal playing out?
I'm the worst. I'm absolutely worst on that. Politics, I'm an outsider. I only got into politics because of the Brexit referendum, and I only stayed in it because I was, wrote a few books and got obsessed with it. But I don't understand politics. I don't understand how people can lie so assiduously, how they can do the things that they do. It's a mystery to me, and I find myself in a constant state of amusement. So what happens here? Don't ask me.
Well, I agree with you, because, I would say the majority of my viewers and listeners consider Starmer to be pathologically dishonest, a man who defaults to lies. That is the perception that my audience have of the PM. That's not tenable, is it, going forward? People don't trust him. To have an electorate who think that way is clearly not very good, either for you or your party or your fellow MPs.
And if it goes on, I think it is untenable. That's why I think he must resign. Because an awful lot of MPs looking down the barrel of a gun, in 2 years or so, they're going to lose their seats.
Can we talk about defence? Why is it so important to my viewers and listeners, and how much needs to be spent?
Well, it's tremendously easy for our generation, who have never really been involved in what you might call total war, unlike my parents, unlike my parents' parents. They had World War I and World War II that just consumed their world for many years. And they had that experience and understood that what a close-run thing that was. And that's a quote from Waterloo, which, again, if Bonaparte had won that, we would be speaking French. So it's very difficult for generations that have grown up in peace to be able to make a judgment as to how warlike you should become. But anybody who understands what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in the Middle East, has to and the parts that, in particular, Russia and China are playing in that. Anybody who thinks sensibly of that realizes that we're in deep trouble in terms of our preparedness for war. Now, obviously, you give money and welfare in order to attract a certain proportion of the electorate to vote you into power. And if you say, no, we're going to cancel the triple lock, we're going to get rid of all these disability payments for stress, we're going to cut civil servants' salaries in half, and all the things that actually
it's up to 10 million votes that you're going to lose.
There you go. Now I would argue that most of those votes you weren't going to get in the first place. But it is a very fine choice for someone like Nigel Farage or Kemi Badenoch to think about when they're trying to figure out how to get to power. Because if you're not in power, you can't do anything. However, I think the best quote I've seen recently, which may be apocryphal, is of Rachel Reeves apparently saying, when asked as the Chancellor for more money for defence, why should we give more money to those people? They can't even get their gender balance right. Now that perfectly encapsulates it to me. Now several people have said that that's the case. The Treasury are denying, in a sort of non-denial denial, that ever was it. But that perfectly captures it for me, because the world is composed of two types of people who work by logic and people who work by feelings. And unfortunately, we have trained our peacetime children to think by feelings. You've got to have a heart. Look at these poor people. They need this money.
You get a medal for participating in the school race, even if you come last.
And all of that good stuff. And the question is whether you can assemble a coalition of the people on the other side who think about these things and who realize that we desperately need to spend twice as much as we are spending.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because briefly, I think that we need to get rid of this idea of percentage of GDP, because with our dead economy, that's actually slightly nonsensical, isn't it? It's diminishing return.
It's an absolute amount.
I think we should have an absolute amount. And what do you think, circa 150 billion annually? Sound about right to you? Because currently in the region of 60 billion, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think you've got to go more than that.
Really?
I'm going up to 150 billion.
My goodness.
I mean, I've written about it in my book, but the book I wrote was a couple of years ago, and I would have been more at your number then.
Yes.
I now believe you have to go much further because the whole nature of warfare has changed totally into autonomous drone warfare, whether on land or sea or air. And there has been an enormous amount of money put in changing our armed forces from the old, tank. That was actually where Boris had a point. The old tank, boots on the ground point of view towards autonomous drone warfare.
Let me tell you that Lord John Moynihan is the author of Return to Growth, How to Fix the Economy. And he has suggested live on air that we should more or less triple our military spending from, it's in the region of 60 billion at the moment. He's saying up to 150 billion pounds, given the parlous state of our hollowed out defences. John, I do hope you'll join me again in the near future.
Love to, Mark.
A pleasure to meet you, and thank you for your valuable time, Lord John Moynihan, Conservative peer, author of Return to Growth.